everyone, and
Got it.
welcome back to the 1 Minute Writing Tip podcast. I'm so excited for today's author guest, Cindy Kehagiaras, who is a 52-year-old debut romance author. She is proving that you can always pursue this goal no matter what age or place in life you're in. Cindy, thank you so much for joining me. It's an honor to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So I would love to know about your journey and how you finally got to the place that you decided, hey, I'm going to finally write and publish my book.
Well, I do not come from the literary community. So this was something that was very nutty to do. I come from business and small business ownership. But during the lockdown, my brain kind of went haywire. And I guess I was just kind of searching for a place that made sense since the whole world didn't. And I started just sort of going back to sort of the stories that I had in my head when I did want to write things when I was much, much younger. And there was a story that was in my head from 30 years ago that just started talking in my head over and over again, conversations and descriptions and images. And I ended up getting up at 2, 3 in the morning and writing until 5, 6 in the morning. And I couldn't stop the images and the voices. And it just, if I didn't write it down, I had no idea what I was doing. But I just had to get it out somehow. And I think that was one of the ways that I was dealing with the lockdown and the scary episode that we all found ourselves in back in 2020. And I was also turning 50. So I was having like all of these epiphanies as well. Like, what does the next 50 years look like? And so I think it all culminated in some kind of out of body experience where I became a writer.
Yeah, it sounds like it really started to become an escape for you, and not an escape in a bad way, but kind of like in a fun, adventurous kind of way, and
Yes.
allowed you to just explore a whole new dynamic of life. Would you agree with that?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I love how you were sharing that you just had to get it out. It's like the characters were alive for you.
They were.
And you were trying to just share that on the page. And I think that's so exciting.
I like to tell people that the voices in my head just wouldn't shut up until I wrote them down. They wouldn't. They just was like, kept on going and going and going. So yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, which I can actually very much relate to that on the fiction scope for sure. So on that same note of those characters in your mind just coming to life and not letting it go, talk a little bit more about where your stories come from and their development and all of that.
Okay, so back in the early 1990s, I just this is the particular Two Princes, my debut book. We were watching the news and learning about all of these new countries, these tiny Middle Eastern countries that we had never heard of before, the Kuwaits and the Dubais, and we'd never heard of these. They all had royal families, and I remember going to school with a couple of boys who their families were from those region and that region and those small countries, and they were 19-year-olds driving Porsches and Mercedes and had these expensive watches, and who are these guys? Why do they have so much money? It's like insane. And the idea just sort of came to me that they all changed their name to American names, and they, one of them loved rap music, the other one loved heavy metal, and it was like they wanted to be Americans so badly. And later on, when I married my husband, who was also first generation American, his parents are Greek, he also grew up in a way where he changed his name to an American name, and he, listened to Motley Crue and Guns N' Roses, and then he also had this whole culture of being a first generation American that was like, the food and the language, and he would go to Greece every year. And so I just thought that was just such a romantic premise of these, you don't really know who their family is. And then all of a sudden, they actually turn out to be these two princes of these small countries in the Middle East. And so I only read spy novels, mysteries. If somebody didn't die on the second page of a book, I, didn't finish it. It wasn't until the lockdown and me turning 50 that I started reading romance for the first time. And I realized that the story that had been in my head for 30 years was actually a romance. And the main character, the love interest, is very, very much inspired by my husband and his family and his family's culture and, on the Mediterranean. So it was very easy for me to embrace that.
Wow. I love the rich history that you're sharing, and like it's how you're saying that it comes from these deep roots from a long time ago that really stuck with you and really made a big impression on you. And it definitely sounds like that created some very diverse and very deep characters. They're not shallow by any means whatsoever.
No, I love real, like, layered, multifaceted characters that have just, my female character is, just wanted to kill it in business, and she wanted to just, make her own way. And the male character is very meticulous, and he lines up his ties in his tie drawer by color, and she's like this crazy California girl who listens to music too loud and doesn't stop at stop signs, and so it's an opposites attract for sure. But they both have multi layers, and a lot of the things that they have in common is their love of travel and their love of food and music, especially 80s heavy metal music.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think probably there's a lot of people, among my listeners for sure, and just in general today, that can relate to that, that they're that female, that they want to do the same thing, or whatever. And so they're gonna be able to connect with those characters on a deep level too, which, I mean, I love that like whether it's fiction or nonfiction. I think it's so important to have that element that really connects with the reader, because that's whenever you really connect with them yourself as the author, like through the book, so
yeah, for sure. I love the layered characters.
So it sounds like it's been quite a whirlwind and such a journey for you. So as you started like dipping your toes in the water and then pursuing publishing, how did you make your publishing decisions, and what did you really learn through that journey?
It was amazing.
Yeah,
it's an amazing journey. The writing community of authors, the community of authors is like nothing I've ever experienced. When you're in business, it's very cutthroat. It's very, throw you under the bus to get to the next level. These people aren't. They are willing to share their stories. They're willing to read pages for you, give critiques. The pitch contests on Twitter were where I really started dipping my toe into getting my pages out there, and sort of throwing it against the wall and see what stuck. And I seem to just sort of relate to a lot of these people, because everybody, even the ones that have been published, many, many books, still have the writer struggles that we all have. And the pitch contests were where I really started getting some really great feedback. And after I had already written this one, I hired a coach to get it readable, because I had never written anything before. So she really coached me. And while we were perfecting Two Princes, another story came into my head that was more contemporary, and more of a person my age. So it was a second chance love with characters in their 50s, with a professional surfer. So he's like this hot silver fox guy that comes back into her life after 30 years. So the second story really started taking off, and I applied everything that I learned, and then I started submitting that to the pitch contest. So I submitted them both to pitch contests. Now, my understanding was that you needed to get an agent. And so I researched all of the agents that did contemporary romance and all of that. And did my query letter proposals, and things were things that I did in my previous life. So that was really easy for me. As long as I had a product to sell, I knew how to sell it. You know what I mean? So, but the agents weren't giving me the time of day. And so I started doing a little bit more research on the industry and found out that the agents really only pitch to 4 big publishers, which is, you know, I mean, that's what everybody wants, is the big bonus and the big marketing budget and all of that, which is great. But from my experience in business, especially in the early 90s, when I was really starting to get momentum in the world of business, there was a lot of consolidation. I was in the newspaper industry, and there was a lot of consolidation. And then by the early 2000s, the newspaper industry was kaput. But there were all of these independent news outlets, these really brilliant journalists and advertising people and, you know, business people that knew how to make a newspaper happen, knew how to make a news outlet happen. And all of a sudden you were seeing the TMZs and all of the new, smaller kind of niche news outlets. And that's what's sort of happening in publishing, that people are leaving the big 5 to start their own publishing companies. And so through these pitch contests, there are these smaller publishers that also get to see you. And not only that, the mentors are brought on to these smaller publishers to be their editors, to be their, you know, acquiring editors, things like that. So with Two Princes, one of the mentors took me on with this new publisher that she was with. And I was only the third author assigned to the publisher. And it was tiny. It was only going to be ebook at first. But with my marketing background, I was able to really utilize social media and make sure that I was out there and in everybody's face and hitting the right people because of all of my background in marketing. And so I sold enough copies that we were able to do a print run. And so we just went to the print run, 2 weeks ago. So now it has a print version. And then also through the pitch contests, one of the mentors also helped me to get to the point where I was ready to submit to a little bit bigger of a publisher. So the second one, the Second Chance, got picked up by a different publisher who's a little bit bigger. And that is coming out this fall.
Okay.
So that was, it wasn't that I had to get an agent. It was these smaller publishers that could really be open to new things, and it was exciting. It's very exciting for this industry.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. And I think that a key element with that is that you really utilize your background and your expertise and your own abilities, and that really partnered well as you pursued that journey. And I love what you said about the supportiveness of the writing community, the author community, because you nailed it. I mean, it's so true that, you mean, there's a ton of Facebook groups as just one example of people that are like, you ask a question and bam, you have an answer. And
oh yeah,
yeah, and that's just so valuable for so many writers out there that are trying to pursue this goal actively, you know. So I love what you shared, and you're spot on. And you actually kind of already answered another question I was going to ask you about with your upcoming works. So I will just circle back around to that in just a minute. But I did want to also ask you, if someone's listening to your journey and thinking, oh my goodness, that sounds amazing, I would love to have that happen. Or if they're thinking, wow, that sounds so amazing, I don't know what to do, like that sounds like so much. What would be your top pieces of advice for them to really just overcome those fears and challenges and to be able to accomplish their goal?
This industry does not seem to be for the weak stomach. You have to be able to take rejection and know that it's not personal. Because when you write something, it feels very, very personal. And at the end of the day, yes, it's still personal, but it's also a product that you need to sell. And if you can't sell it, nobody's going to read it. And if you're putting yourself out there for other people to read it, you have to have a real, like, strong backbone especially for the rejection. Because I was rejected by probably 40 agents that I really put out there. And, I see these posts like, oh, my dream agent, and I'm like, I don't even know what that is. What is a dream agent? Somebody who believes in you should be the dream agent. That's just my take on it. But anybody who wants to get into this business, I'm just going to say, write it, read it, write it, read it, write it. But also read other people's work. Things that are similar to yours, things are not similar to yours, things that are so far-fetched. I read a lot of dark stuff, which I don't write dark stuff, but I read a lot of dark stuff. But I just like layered characters, and the darker ones, especially the independent publishers that write that dark stuff, have layered characters. The plot isn't always there, but there's layered characters.
Yeah.
But really good writers are readers too. You can't be so arrogant that you think you know it all and that everybody should read your work because it's so good, because that's not how it works. You have to appreciate what else is out there and who's doing it right, and taking from them a little bit. And it's not like stealing. It's like, you're getting inspired by them. It's not really taking from them. You're getting inspired by them. And we're artists. Artists inspire artists. So that's, and the community, most of the community understands that and appreciates it.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I think that's such a key point too, because I think a lot of writers have that kind of holding back of like, oh, well, maybe my story is too similar to somebody else's story, or, there's already so many books on this topic out there, or, some kind of feelings like that. And it's important for them to know that, each person's story matters and can add something. And it's your own personal experience or spin on it, or your own way of saying it, or
what it
looks like. Yeah. And it can just really resonate with a reader in a different way than maybe those other books. Right. And so,
yeah, romance tropes are the perfect example of that. I can't tell you how many Grumpy Sunshines I've read. It's my favorite. And I've read so many of them, and I've written a couple of them, and I love that trope. And then there's the older brother's best friend trope, which is another one that I love. And that's why tropes are so popular, because they're what's going to happen. It's a romance. It has an happily ever after. That with the brothers, older brother's best friend, that she's probably been in love with him for years. I mean, what's going to happen, but it's just, then that's where the characters come in. That's where the characters and the side characters, and, that's where all of that comes. And that's what does make it different. And it's fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And exactly. And you're right, because like you just said, it doesn't matter how many times they've read that same kind of general plot line or trope. It doesn't matter, because they just love it. And there's a reader for every author that has, their own little corner of the market. There's always a group of readers that are like, oh, I love these types of books, no matter how many they read.
Totally.
Yeah. Right. So yeah. So on that same topic of more books and continuing to write, in a certain genre, do share more about your upcoming work and what it's about.
So Two Princes has been out since May. I wrote a sequel, and that's with editors right now, getting revised and looked at. And then the second one with the other publisher, which is coming out this fall, I also just submitted the sequel for that, and I'm working on the third one for that. So both books both have series, and then I ended up writing so much in the lockdown. Some of it's completely unreadable, but the stories are still really good. So I'd love to finesse those one of these days. I'd like to sort of explore different genres. I have another book that I wrote that is more women's fiction. I have another one that is like a fantasy romance. So I mean, there's lots of different little things out there, but they just need to be finessed and edited and made readable. And I'm still learning a lot. I'm still very, very much learning how to be a writer. And there's, I've had some of my editors just like get completely exasperated with me because I don't know the formal formulas for a lot of the grammar, which I'm trying. I'm really trying. I'm trying not to use the same words over and over and over again. I'm trying to make sure that, the thoughts that are coming out in my head are like making sense on the paper to the readers. And, so, yeah, so I'm really trying to learn still. I'm still learning.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. That's the thing is there are authors who, numerous books and they're still learning, they continue to learn and grow with every book. And ultimately there is an element of, talent and storytelling, but writing ultimately is a skill set that you can hone and develop and grow. And so, that's the good thing to know too, is someone that maybe doesn't have the talent or the knack, but still has this dream, they can absolutely still pursue that and develop those skills just by doing it. Right. So keep going for it for sure. So if people are listening and they're thinking, okay, I would love to check out these romances, they sound amazing, how can they connect with you and get your book?
I have a website, Cindy, KEH-Stories.com. And my link to my Amazon page is on there. And for right now, I think it's just on Amazon. It's just 2 printers on Amazon. I'm not sure what platforms the perpetual is going to be on. We haven't gotten to that point yet, but I will. I'll have all the information on my website, and definitely shout out on social media because I shout a lot on social media. Perfect. So I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter.
Awesome. Okay, great. So for all of my listeners, if you enjoy romance novels with characters over 40 and those types of journeys that Cindy shared with us along the episode, do check out Cindy's website and her book on Amazon. I will include her details in the description for you guys. So Cindy, thank you again so much for joining me on.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So for all my listeners, thank you also for tuning in. I hope you leave a review wherever you're listening from, and I hope to see you next time.